MechWarrior 2 was one of the first PC games I ever played on a neighbor's computer in 1995. Ever since then, I've loved the series and played every single one of them. The MechWarrior games have always been technical landmarks in the gaming industry, going back to the original MechWarrior in 1989, one of the earliest 3D PC games. MechWarrior wasn't the first video game to be made out of the BattleTech license. There were two BattleTech branded games, 1988's The Crescent Hawk's Inception and its sequel, Crescent Hawk's Revenge, both made by Westwood Studios, late of Command & Conquer fame, and published by Infocom. The first game is a traditional RPG in the vein of Ultima, if anything, exploring an overworld punctuated with bouts of turn-based combat, but the sequel was more of an RTS. MechWarrior was the first BattleTech game to put you in the cockpit to fight from first person. It was developed by Dynamix, who later went on to make their own mech series Earthsiege, the RTS Cyberstorm, and the team-based shooter Tribes, all in the same convoluted universe requiring several paperbacks worth of background. MechWarrior was published by Activision, who had purchased the previous owners of the franchise, Infocom, and thus acquired the BattleTech license. MechWarrior takes a bit of residual inspiration from the earlier BattleTech games, and plays an awful lot like a text adventure game. You play as Gideon Vandenberg, son of a royal family, all of whom are killed by unidentified pirate mechs. Gideon takes an assumed name, calling himself Gideon Braver. Don't start facepalming yet, or you'll have a concussion by the time we're finished. Then he takes off to find his family's stolen chalice. Soon he finds out that the pirates that attacked his family were the infamous Darkwing Lance. See what I mean? Go easy on your skull, we're just getting started. You start off with a badly maintained Jenner Light mech, not the lightest, but not exactly a powerhouse, on a random planet without much to go on, and a 5-year time limit before you automatically lose the game. It's a lot like Star Control 2, only there aren't obvious signs of the time limit, possibly leading you to think that you can live the life of a mercenary with no consequence. MechWarrior is hard, which is kind of a no-brainer given Dynamix's next game Earthsiege, aka Terminator without a happy ending. You start out almost too weak to even take missions, and when you do succeed at missions, you barely make a profit because the damage you incur will cost most of your paycheck to repair. If you catch a break and get lucrative contracts that you manage not to utterly botch, you can hire lancemates and buy new mechs. The heavy stuff seems like a tease though, because affording something as awesome as the Warhammer, or the epic though somewhat dorky-looking Battlemaster, will set you back. Most of the game takes place in an old-school RPG style. You travel to a new town, or planet if you will, ask the barkeep for local rumors, visit the shop, and take missions or fix up your mech. This portion of the game is all menu-driven and dead silent, though there are some nice illustrations. When you do get into combat, it's in full 3D, with vector graphics making up the mechs and environments. It was pretty impressive at the time, coming a few years before Ultima Underworld and Wolfenstein 3D, but the gameplay is difficult and primitive. Most of the features that became standard in the MechWarrior series are here, but you'll notice it more closely resembles Earthsiege. You can give basic commands to your lancemates, which work surprisingly well, and there are cool wireframe damage readouts, though those are on a separate screen so they're impossible to use. You can make weapon groups, well, you can make one weapon group, and there's even a limited torso twist. The audio design is minimal and mostly just made up of PC speaker beeps. There is, as far as I can tell, a piece of MIDI music in the bar, which is pretty good, and a funeral dirge when you get killed. Since all you do in this game is order drinks and get killed, you'll hear them quite a lot. MechWarrior has a good variety of mission types, but they're almost all procedurally generated, and they are a bit hard to figure out. The manual contains a page devoted to the different types of missions, which can really help since the briefing screens just list the mission type, not what you actually have to do. When you're in the market for a new contract, there are options to vary the total pay, the percent of the pay the employer gives you up front, and the percent of salvage earned, salvage being earned in straight-up dollars instead of pieces or tons or individual parts like in later games. This is pretty cool for a couple of reasons. First, it makes your interaction with employers better. Growing animosity from factions you opposed was hinted at in Mech 2 Mercs, but it didn't show up for real until MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries. Second, there's something more authentic about bargaining on the contract. It also expands your options. If you're in need of some emergency cash to fix up a mech before you deploy, you can take a smaller total payoff in exchange for a larger percentage up front. It's a nice system, though if you're careful you can drive up the total payout by always taking no money up front. It's never really enough to make a difference. After you take a few missions, they increase drastically in difficulty, whether or not you're ready. You'll be out-tunned on almost every mission, so your best bet is to tie up their attention with your lancemates while you blow off a leg. Taking out the leg makes the mech fall down, achieving a complete kill rather than just a mobility kill. The game takes this into account, and you don't have to actually destroy all enemy mechs to end the mission, just disable them. The result is more salvage, which you need. One element I like is the in-depth repair system, where you repair individual components. Given the shoestring budget your gimpy merc outfit is working with, you may not have the cash to fix up all the parts of a mech. Or if during a long-term contract, you may not have extra ammo with you. This gives the game some classic BattleTech grit. You're not going into battle with a pristine mech every time, you're piloting an aging machine, with innate weaknesses due to a lack of time or cash. Still, it's so damn time-consuming to repair pieces one at a time that you'll probably just hit repair all and blow the extra cash on an arm you really don't need right now. Even if you try to follow the story, the game feels very directionless. You go from planet to planet, talking to the barkeep and meeting crazy people like Kangaroo Jack. Oh man. Sometimes you get clues and then go to another planet. The combat is entirely optional until the very end of the game. The best way to play the game is to immediately sell your starting mech and just complete the story mode until you get to the end. Trying to take missions is basically a self-defeating money sink. Even at the end, when you need to earn money for your final contract, it's much easier just to buy mechs on industrial planets and sell them on backwaters. Taking missions is just fucking suicide. You can't make enough money doing missions to pay for the damage you incur doing them. In true adventure game style, saying the wrong thing to the thug in the alley will leave you at a game over screen, but you can't fail the skill-based combat sections. No matter what, Gideon walks away unscathed, but you can die when you have no control over your character. Sudden death is a grim reality in the 31st century. Oh geez, thanks for that. Your lance mates can be killed in combat, which makes it feel like Oregon Trail, where you can't die until every last family member has bit the dust from cholera, fever, and improperly set broken legs. It's surprising Gideon doesn't have survivor's guilt over all of this. The background provided in Universe is better than the actual story, though the ubiquitous gray text boxes are very well written. The news service reports on bits of trivia and cool events that might have been lifted out of some of the novels. As time progresses towards the 5-year limit, events that should be recognizable and even iconic to Battletech fans unfold in the background. Gideon's story itself is almost pathetically uninteresting. He and up to 3 random other guys hunting down an enemy unit consisting of 1 lance, which is a maximum of 5 guys, for revenge. It's both trite and super small scale. That's not to say small-scale stuff can't be effective. Sometimes a story with a personal focus can have serious impact, but that's not the case here. Gideon has a dumb name, a dumb face, a dumb backstory, and occasionally really dumb lance mates, none of whom get much characterization. This doesn't make it into an uncompelling game. The freeform quest to build a sweet merc unit is definitely a draw. It just means the story isn't good at pulling you in. As long as the freeform questing is good enough, a weak or even excuse-level plot can be tolerated, but the freeform mission content in MechWarrior has the beige aroma of the procedural generator wafting off of it. The bigger problem is that the game is set in the interesting world of Battletech, but given the incredibly rude treatment of Battletech licensed video games, which are never allowed to write their own stuff. Every game in the MechWarrior series deals with small-scale stuff on the sidelines, while climactic game-changing stuff is happening all around, and worse, it taunts you with it in the newsfeed. Now, the most important part of this retrospective isn't really the games themselves, and how will they continue to stand the test of time. MechWarrior 1 doesn't hold up very well as a mech game. It's interesting as an adventure game maybe, but rather than being a proto-Mech 2 Mercenaries, it's more of a spiritual prequel to Dynamix's later Earthsiege series, which share a lot of the playstyle and absurd difficulty. What I'd really like to talk about is collecting and playing these games. The original MechWarrior release on 5 1/4-inch floppies is extremely hard to find, and expensive when you do find it. Playing it is less difficult. Just use DOSBox. Older versions of DOSBox get along better with MechWarrior, and you'll need to disable MIDI emulation to stop it from crashing after every mission, and enable aspect ratio scaling to keep the graphics from being squished. Other than that, your biggest problem is to get it off of the floppies and install it. Your best bet is to look for the Power Hits Battletech collection on CD-ROM. It's also rare and also expensive, but it contains the 2 Battletech RPGs that came before MechWarrior, as well as MechWarrior itself. For the first time ever on this show, I think I have to say, I don't have it, so I can't give you any info on compatibility with modern systems, though I assume it installs in DOSBox just fine. What I can say is, given the rarity and price, MechWarrior isn't worth tracking down except for the most die-hard MechWarrior fans. It has more Battletech flavor than other recent games in the series, but it's let down by a difficult and badly aged combat system, and a very weak text-adventure game-style plot. The series really took off after this, but that'll have to wait until next time. See you soon.